is it Minneapolis?
I don't know where. I know that there is a place in Minnesota, I believe, where they have prayer calls as a matter of local government. I do think that's happening.
That starts getting real weird.
Yeah.
What's going on, you guys? We have Joe Rogan spreading American fascism and Emma Vigeland fighting the war for freedom. I'll be playing a clip from the Majority Report with Emma Vigeland, as well as the Joe Rogan Experience. Joe Rogan is having JD Vance on, and I get some of my commentary in as well. Let's get into it.
That under Obama, Barack Hussein Obama, that Muslims were taking over the country, that across state houses across the country, that they were imposing Sharia law.
They're putting mosques where 9/11 happened.
Yeah. And, you know, this was a hysteria, obviously, that sparked after 9/11. But then when Obama got elected, the fact that his middle name was Hussein and the fact that he was a black man sent right-wingers into an absolute tizzy. And oddly, this comes up in this interview with JD Vance and Joe Rogan. Let's see how JD approaches it in 2024.
For a lot of people, worst case scenario, when they start thinking about religious influence on the way they're allowed to behave and the way their state is governed. Worst case scenario is a state adopts Sharia law. This is worst case scenario.
Yeah.
And I think all these people that would cry against the concept of Islamophobia really need to understand what that means and what you're talking about. And to say that that's an outrageous and ridiculous idea that's never going to take place, it's kind of already worked its way into some societies.
It has.
It has.
It has.
And there are, is it Minnesota that has call to prayer? Like, is it Minneapolis?
I don't know where. I know that there is a place in Minnesota, I believe, where they have prayer calls as a matter of local government. I do think that's happening.
That starts getting real weird.
Yeah.
Stuff like that starts getting real weird. And when you have people that are openly saying our goal is, and they've talked about this in Toronto, like activists have said, our goal is to outbreed everyone who is not Muslim and vote it out and put Sharia law in place.
Outbreed.
That's very scary.
Women have to wear burqas. This is how it works.
Yeah. Well, and that's what to me is so crazy about some of the hyper left-wing reaction to, you know, the idea.
And this just so happens to work perfectly with Trump's call for ethnic cleansing of Gaza and the death threats to the Palestinians. You know, this is just perfect. This goes right along with it. You know, this homegrown fascism that we have here in America is now going to go hand in hand with the Jewish fascism that's going on, you know, and it's just as simple as that. You know, you have Zionism and Americanism. These are the front lines of our Western civilization and so-called freedom in our world today. And before you think that I sound crazy, this is an exact quote from Pete Hegseth. It's what a lot of the right-wingers are doing nowadays. You have them even saying, you know, these Palestinians, Arabs, Muslims, they're trying to erase the Jewish ties to Jerusalem as we speak. That's what they're actually saying. So then that gives them the right to bomb innocent civilians, to go in. They're using the idea that God has chosen them and that they are always right to be able to conduct their evils on the rest of the world.
Idea that like somehow I want to force every man, woman, and child to go to my church is ridiculous. I just don't want to do that. I've never had any interest in doing that.
Pause it. I want them to the government to conform to my church's position on abortion, though.
My church is ridiculous. I just don't want to do that. I've never had any interest in doing that. But where you see actual real religious tyranny is increasingly in Western societies where you've had a large influx of immigrants who don't necessarily assimilate into Western values.
Oh,
this is
disgusting. All right. Great question by Joe Rogan.
I really hate this prick.
So dispelling the notion of Islamophobia, because there's a real concern about Sharia law. So Sharia means the correct path in Arabic. So the right path law is what they're worried about. And he's also worried about calls to prayer in Minneapolis. You know, at 12 noon, we're right near a church here, our office. What happens every day at 12 noon? We hear church bells, don't we?
What do these people say, like, about governments not using the word Merry Christmas or whatever?
Right.
Like, who gives a shit about this? Like, a place with a large Muslim population is having... like the equivalent of church bells.
But that's like, if we were to hear those church bells at noon, and I would be like, oh, that's so scary.
This is fundamentalist. No,
that's the equivalent of what they are freaked out about, little babies.
But I'm sorry, like the topic of religious fundamentalist influence on American politics, and
Please.
You start with Muslims. Are you a fucking moron?
Well, they are racist. That's the problem.
Yeah.
It's just like, we're not a Christian nationalist country by charter. Although a lot of right-wingers would like to dispel that notion, they say that we've been founded under Judeo-Christian values. We are supposed to have freedom of religion of this country, and it's not supposed to be a part of our government. But that's, in reality, not the practice. The entirety of the Republican Party, like an overwhelming majority of the Republican Party, are Christians themselves. They're also Christian Zionists, by the way. And they have been trying to impose religious fundamentalism on this country with some success.
And exactly what Emma Vigeland is saying, it is working. A lot of these universities right now, they're being slandered by Zionists as allies of Hamas. And then that leads to, students have been disciplined, suspended, or expelled. And it's all of these ideas that it has something to do with combating anti-Semitism. When in reality, this campaign, it's about criminalizing dissent, forcing these institutions to adhere to all of these, ideological dictates from the far right, from Christian fascists. Anti-Semitism is literally just the freaking excuse.
For my entire lifetime and before my lifetime, the overturning of a fundamental right for abortion was because of their Republican Sharia law.
So the big Sharia law change here is the city allowed broadcast last year, but only between 7 a.m. and 10 p.m. But now you get that sometimes there's one at like 5:50 a.m. So that's the Sharia. Is now we've moved from you have to wait to 7 a.m. and you can do it at 5:50, and that's how Islam takes over the world.
That's tyranny, according to J.D. Vance and Joe Rogan there. And it's like, it's so
These
instructive.
are the free speech guys.
It's free speech guys, but it's so instructive to see how Vance in real time redefines tyranny as coming from below as opposed to coming from above. And that tells you everything that you need to know about right-wing populism and these faux like frickin' Sagar and that kind of new rebranding for right-wing politics. They always try to invent these flavors of right-wing viewpoints that obscure the very fundamental reality that it's been an identical reactionary political ideology for quite some time now. And it's centered around religious Christian fundamentalism, and it's centered around unfettered corporate power and wealth consolidation to crush people down below them. So what J.D. Vance provides as a very rich guy with a very rich benefactor in Peter Thiel, what he provides is cover for billionaires and wealthy folks so that he can say it's the Muslims, a tiny minority in this country, but yes, focus on Minnesota, hyper target racialized violence towards them, whatever.
Don't look at the fundamentalists in my coalition that want, say, IVF banned.
Because they're white and they're a part of the power structure.
They're
Christian and they're assimilated. What he provides is a perfect get out of jail free card for the richest and most powerful in the country. Look below you. Tyranny comes from below, says J.D. Vance.
And there we have it, you guys. That is a common thing with, Christian nationalists, with this fundamentalist religion, where it's going to say, oh, well, no, we can do these things. We can stop you from doing certain things, but it's because we're human beings. It's a human being. It's the right of a human being, because they don't have to think anything above that, and now you're forced to have to go and be, quote unquote, like a human being. And when in reality, that there's a secret agenda that they're a part of that they might not even realize that they're a part of. It's the same thing. They're wanting to cleanse the society of its human contaminants, the way Israel is cleansing itself of the Palestinians. It's the same thing. It is literally wanting to cleanse America of its contaminants. Let me know what you guys think, though, in the comments. It's another day in the progressive way.